And on top of that, if we get cheap power, we can then use it to fuel heavy industry if we want it here. If we have steam, we don't know what to do with it. We plug it into a indoor water park and heat it. We could use it for the various hospitals if we wanted to. It's a little hard to transport steam for very far, but you use it for other scientific or other technology projects. This builds a lot of things here. It gives you the ability to use what, if you wanted to make pure water out of the St. Lawrence, it wouldn't be very hard to make pure water using the steam from this, from a steam evaporator system, to make pure water. Pure water, ultra-pure water, is in the pharmaceutical, the semiconductor, and the power industry. So that's a big deal. That pure water could be loaded onto tank cars and out of here. Again, what we're trying to do is use those industries that we know are growth-oriented or opportunity-oriented, how they knit together, and what suggestions they begin to put in our minds, or our collective minds, on these kinds of clustering. Clustering is a relationship between industries that have synergistic needs. In this case, synergistic imaginative needs in this one industry, in this instance. But I think it's a big one because there's a lot of research going on nationally about this. Cross-border consumer services, retail. General merchandise stores, building supply stores. They are big growth markets for North Country. They are not sexy industries. This is retail. This is $7 an hour stuff. But if it generates wholesale demand, if it generates warehouse demand, if it generates transportation demand, we have a cluster that works. The Canadians that come across here, this 14% per year growth or whatever it is that we're seeing, and now new numbers are much higher. There is a new duty-free regulation that says if you stay 24 hours, the $50 allotment goes to $200. Guess what? You stay 4 days, it goes to $800. So people are obviously coming across the bridges and all over the north border to take advantage of this. If we can get them to stay for a few days, they'll not only shop more. If we had a place to put some of this, they would store it. There is a nice little industry here that's going on. I don't know if I've stolen the name from the company or not. When you buy retail in Canada, you probably can't get a lot of delivery into Canada without paying a lot of duty and transportation costs. So people are now warehousing some of this stuff right here in Ogdensburg. These distribution services are also an incubator business which is happening at the corporate center over here in your park. So the idea is to expand this idea so that there can be an opportunity for more and more equipment, not just retail, but all kinds of things that can happen here at the border. And then businesses and companies and individuals can come and pick these things up at their leisure, take delivery in the United States. Again, we talked about this, an international visitor center at Bridge Plaza. All we're trying to suggest is that if we can go after more of the European flavor of French and Middle Canada, we can create a nice little image for this immediate area around the bridge. Perhaps it spills over into the lodging industry, which is exactly what I hope it will do. But I also think it will spur entertainment and other venues meant to capture more of the folks. We go back to that cluster idea with, let's say, the indoor water park, that the cogeneration plant burns the hot water to produce cheap energy to heat a water park, which keeps people here while they're shopping for a couple of days, which goes to their hotels and brings the stuff right back to here. So as we begin to promote the idea that this is an international gateway, and it can be in German, it can be in Spanish, it can be whatever it needs to be, but it suggests that when you go to the French-Canadian side or the British-Canadian side of Canada, of dual cities like Windsor, Canada, you'll find a delightful experience that you don't find in Detroit going there. I don't know why, but it's just, we have painted our American cities as so American. We've lost out on any international or global feel to them. There are sister cities. The two Niagara Falls are a typical example. Niagara Falls, USA is dismal. Niagara Falls, Canada is delightful. Maybe it's because of the gambling and some of the other. But the venues, the entertainment venues, the things they make for excitement, the nightlife draw, the lighting, the flags, every element of that is beginning to suggest that we promote more of this market area, because what happens? This is quality of life stuff. Quality of life stuff brings industrial investors. So it begins to say, let's get out of this rut that we can't make more business here. We wring our hands and all that kind of stuff. Let's make at least a small area, a small marketing, delightful, international sense of the place. And I think that'll draw more visitors. It may draw more investment, which is what I'm hoping it will do. But no matter what, if these things begin to happen, these people begin to happen. We get one of these big draws here, a Bass Pro Shop or a Cabela's, suddenly your traffic is backed up like you can't believe. Now, a lot of people are saying, why can't we ride bicycles across the bridge, for example? It all comes down to this cross-border delay and customs delay. I don't know what we do about that. That goes right back to sitting with the Homeland Security. Is there some methodology that says we can get people across here quickly, more efficiently? Maybe there's technology involved with it. There is now, in where I live in New Jersey, you are not going to have any more toll takers on our roads. It's all going to be photographic. They're just going to mail you a bill. Why can't this be done in Border Patrol a little bit, unless it's a risk issue? And I think that's when you have to note this. But maybe through technologies, there's ways to streamline some of the cross-border capabilities. If these folks are coming across and spending $2.50 to buy gasoline or to go shopping, and that cross-border delay isn't a big deal, then business shouldn't feel that way either. There's got to be some way to make this a little bit more comfortable for everybody going back and forth across the border. Canada is going to react to this. It has to. I don't know when, but the Canadians are going to say, when? We're losing all of our retail to America? That's insane. We have to stop this duty-free crap, and we have to stop and produce more stuff going on our borders and keeping our people here from coming into America and going shopping. It doesn't make sense. But the Canadians are so overburdened with their regulations and their taxation. This is what's happening here. So you see it, and your stores are seeing it. Now we need to get it even bigger. And there has to be entertainment venues and nighttime venues and cultural venues that come into this. In our report, there's two big elements. Quality of life. Quality of life is very poor in compared to the other market areas as we analyzed. Quality of life are physicians per 100,000 in population, arts employment, number of sunny days, you can't do much about that. And the fourth escapes me for the moment. But there are elements of quality of life that are unachievable, and then there's other ones that you can do something about. The sense that there is excitement and fun and delight here helps with all that quality of life. The quality of life is something that's in the mechanism for site selection. We don't like to push it all that much, but executives always want to know they're going to enjoy where they're going to be relocated to. So that's important. That's an important one. Health and wellness. I don't like the idea that health care is a target. And here's why. Healthcare, I always look at the target clusters there's three of them. There are traded clusters, traded industries, which means money comes in from the outside to your area. You produce a product, you sell it outside, they bring the money back in. Manufacturing, traded industry. There are natural resource industries, such as agribusiness. You can't grow strawberries, in Manhattan. It just doesn't work. You can here. You can create dairy farms that create milk. So again, that's a natural resource cluster. The other one is called a local cluster. We take in each other's wash. Healthcare, very much in my mind, does this. However, it is a big, big driver. Hospitals are big economic engines. Problem is that they're taking it from you and me and everybody else. We're not creating stronger economy by influx of more cash from the outside. To some degree we can here, because this is still recognized as a growth area as we all get older. Nursing care, specific healthcare needs. There is some element that is always going to be growing, and so you can't deny healthcare, but it's not an industry I love to push. In this case, New York State is saying we must push it because this is where the industry is headed. We can also take the idea that there are new specialty facilities that people will travel to great distances if they're there. We do have 4 nice acute hospitals, and we have the state psychiatric hospital. So as we build on those synergies, we look for the opportunities to add new things, oncology clinics, birthing clinics. I read a nice report that the Canadians, of course, don't want to tout this, but there are lots of Canadians who come to America because their substance abuse centers take 4 or 5 months to get into, and they have a teenage daughter who's hooked on drugs, and they got to get her into rehab immediately. So they'll come. Plastic surgery, elective surgery, that certainly has to be. All those kinds of elements of healthcare that are on the fringes or on the outside of centralized medical care that insurance would normally pay for. If we can find those elective procedures, and I'm asking that we look into, across the state of New York, let's catalog the amount of, or let's report on the amount of cross-border Canadian elective procedures that are going on, and also suggest the idea of a concierge system that allows people to use the technologies it's called telemedicine, to be able to see their doctors remotely through video cameras or whoever they use it. If you've ever seen this show, and I don't like this word medical concierge, because there's a television show that deals in the Hamptons where the people are always on call. We don't expect that people are going to go to Canada to take care of their patients, but there is an opportunity for a different kind of medical care, which is on a retainer basis that people pay on a regular basis, rather than just when they see the doctor. Every month they send them a check, and the doctor is constantly in touch with them. So technology is a way to do this for a wealthier market, Canadian markets. All this begins to happen 5, 7 years later. We start to say this kind of opportunity begins to suggest itself. That we have a wonderful waterfront site, we've got great hospitals. Now it's time to introduce an oasis here. It's time to say St. Lawrence County is a home for wellness. Okay? Holistic care, all the other elements involved with it, outdoor recreation, all the things that we enjoy about this area, we can say suddenly, this would be very hard to create without this being in process. So if you look on your calendar, this is the last thing we would ever suggest that you do. This could very well be a reuse of the St. Lawrence Psychiatric Center. I know you've had a lot of discussions about some of this. We'll talk a little bit more in another cluster. International business and logistics. Again, right back to what we were talking about. Canadian companies being here, executives commuting from Ottawa, getting a little tired of doing it all the time, or from farther distances. Besides just Canadian, obviously the UK, France, and Western Europe. We have a lot of American retailers who are pushing product back and forth through Montreal and going through the Canadian rail system or through the container system. I don't see why we can't do that here. I can't see why the container on rail isn't being more utilized through the port area. I think it should be. All the reading I do, and you've had a lot of press lately about changing the port to a container port. But I think it's difficult because you don't have product in December through March. What are you going to do? Trains, you do. Container on rail is easy. A rail barge, they use rail barges in Detroit. I don't know if it's worth doing, but possibly, you talk to the people across the river and say, could we hook up with the Canadian rail system right through here? In New York Harbor, we do it. The rail barges. The problem is, can we get across the river in the middle of the river, in the middle of the winter? Why would you say to somebody, you can't do this 3 months out of the year, unless these are products that don't need to be a constant flow? We come right back to the idea that, let's say, through the other cluster on energy, suppose we're bringing in recyclable material that we're going to burn. Well, there's no reason to bring that in December. You want to have that stockpiled all summer, just like you have road salt stockpiled. So you have that capability to do that if you pick commodities that are seasonal or can be bulk handled in 9 months out of the year. Without this, there's no headquarters that's ever going to come here. Somehow along the line, you need a Class A office building. There are lots of engineers, there are a lot of medical facilities, a lot of insurance folks, there's a lot of professionals in Canada. They would love to be in America. They're not necessarily going to come at $4 space here in Commerce Park. They're going to want to see a $17, $18, $20 office building here that they can show their clients off to. This is a difficult and expensive deal, but if you begin to make this happen, this says I set the tone for a new office park on the river right here as an expansion of Commerce Park. Again, maybe near, let's say, again, that properties that you have on the river or even in the psychiatric center. This begins to suggest that office, white-collar, professional use can happen here. You need merchandising and wholesaling work is high-tech work. It's good work. It's white-collar office work. It's not the back of the room kind of stuff anymore. Flex buildings could also still work, and we have flex building capability here. But without this, we're never going to get a professional office firm, an engineering firm, coming over from Ontario and doing work in the United States. This is I don't know how big this has to be, probably 30 or 40,000 square feet in that range, two-story building. But eventually it has to be done. Preservation and reuse. This is an easy way. All this means is putting construction people back to work. Again, one of those big push industries from the North Country is specialty trade contractors. Okay, not heavy road contractors that will come into play if I-98 gets built, but the guys that go out and finish the roofs, or do the electrical, or do the plumbing, or all the other kind of stuff. The building and supply stores, all those kinds of fix-it, repair, easy kind of stuff. All right, well, how do we get that into a real business sense? You have a series of sites that you have in mind that you're trying to produce. Again, they relate back to tourism, they relate back to some other uses. The idea to get an organized methodology to create more construction industry is always important. It's always dependent on the economic cycle and everything else. Getting an architect, getting a group of regional architects here to do a charrette, a design charrette around the psychiatric center, the old buildings, the delightful old buildings. All over the place in interesting areas, you'll see these. They did in Providence, Rhode Island, they do in Chicago, they do everything else. You get 10, 12 architects, you advertise them, they spend 2 or 3 days here, they don't sleep, they draw up lots of pretty pictures, and then they have a big public meeting. So it starts to create the buzz. But at the same time, you also need to know if those buildings are salvageable. A lot of people are pressing some ideas about what to do with them, but it's time for you to go out there and really find out what the costs would be to renovate them. They're terrific buildings, but they're awful buildings at the same time. But you have a lot of it. There's a lot of space there. Now, the question is some of that salvageable? Is none of it salvageable? Could you annex it into your park? As a state port authority, you have the delightful ability to take on a project and not have to go through the city of Ogdensburg. You can do your own building permitting capability, just like the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey does. A government organization or semi-government organization, you've got a lot of ability you can do. You could probably take the property if you wanted to. I wouldn't suggest that you fight the New York State Department of Health, but at least interface with them and find out whether or not that property could be available. Even if it's raised and it makes room for a new high Class A office park there, or it goes back to being part of a retail mixed-use thing, or it goes back to being that spa that we talked about. That's a large waterfront, water view property. The nice new building on the river, blocks all kinds of riverfront view, okay, fine. That's a good hospital, it stays there, unless it closes. I don't think it would. But you have a cogeneration plant there, you have these old buildings, you probably have unitary power, you probably have steam throughout all of that underground. The cogeneration probably supplies all that. It's difficult not to do all that, to play with it. Once you get some of these people involved with this, then you start to say, okay, how do we get this for the presentation off the ground? How do we create an Oswegatchie waterfront redevelopment zone for entertainment and for food and waterfront uses, mixed uses? How do we get tax credits pushed through here for zones like that? See, once those things begin to happen, an adaptive reuse design credit, for example, that everybody in the world will start applying for them. That promotes the construction industry. That promotes the material supply industry. That promotes the wholesaling of materials and supplies. That promotes the transportation of material. All these things tie together. Construction is lagging, obviously. New product development is not going to happen easily in this economy, but finding new uses for old buildings can. Adaptive reuse, historic preservation, is just a nice political umbrella to say, let's put a lot of people back to work. So you have to promote this. This is a promotable industry. It's not a gigantic winner for anybody, but it begins to make things happen in a time when we must put people to work. Okay, last one, transportation services. This kind of covers everything. The last time we were here, we were talking about a
truck stop. The truck stop, I think, is still a critical idea, but the foreign trade zone prohibits you from selling retail fuel. You can, as your own board, foreign trade zone initial board, you can approve it, but you have to go through the big FTZ board in Washington to get it through. It could still happen, but the big question is, do you need to? Canadians are, in essence, are spending $150 in fuel here as opposed to $220 or so in Ottawa. So the $2.50 or whatever maybe per axle, I don't know what you charge for a big truck to come across the fuel, it's still a good idea. So it'd be nice to sell discounted fuel if we could. We talked about aviation fuel last time, and you have to fly out of the country to make it work. Again, probably the same element here. I did as much research about this as I could find. I can't seem to find any more without going through Washington. But I think you can easily extend the zone to wherever you want. But the big question is whether or not you can get a retail exemption to sell fuel. We talked about this element. This also suggests that the other part of this period that's not there might be, and consider extension of passenger rail. Now you have passenger rail capability on your railroad. The question is, do you want to do it? I think you'd have to do a little bit more thinking about that, whether it makes any sense or not. You have to fight the fact that if I-98 never happens, we're not going to have any more great transportation options other than air cargo, which is questionable. Passenger rail is still questionable, but those things in conjunction can work a little bit better than doing nothing. So many people were saying air services. We want to fly people. We want people to get here easily. I don't see why you can't fly to Montreal. I don't see why Cape Air can't fly to Montreal. There may be some other capabilities about reaching some of these other cities, Newburgh, possibly even Westchester Airport down in New York. Maybe going the other direction. I don't know if Cape Air feels like it. Maybe trying to get to Pittsburgh, for example. It's the idea that there is a larger air presence here. Now, you have a 5,200-foot runway. You need a 6,600-foot runway to land jets. You can do one of two things. You could reroute Route 11 and have a longer runway, or you could cross the runway, the north-south runway, where you do have space. But no matter what, without some other air service capability here, if I-98 does happen, this airport needs to grow. You know that. And somehow you don't, again, go back into market timing and things we talked about earlier, you don't want Watertown eating your lunch, and you don't want necessarily Messina doing it either, even though it's part of the county, or Potsdam for whatever reason, because it's closer in, maybe they have more land to expand the airport, and might be closer to the interchange that'll happen than we will be. But no matter what, if we can jump on some of these issues early, and it may mean bring another carrier here instead of Cape Air. Maybe there's a French carrier who did just the same thing for Montreal. But it'd be to suggest that we have those four cities. We've got Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and Quebec City. We can service logistically. Do we have air product, that air cargo product, that is just in time, medically oriented, transplant kind of stuff, whatever it is that has to fly, or the cost of it doesn't matter because it's valuable, but it can serve those markets a little bit quicker. A riverboat cruise port. Why isn't there one here? Has anyone ever suggested this to you before? Every port that I know of is converting to cruise port. I don't see why we can't have a river vessel of some kind going through Thousand Islands and further down into the lake, or going the other direction. We are the only port, U.S. port. You must jump on this U.S. port element. You know this. But there's no reason this can't be done. This is cheap. This is easy. This begins to suggest more marine services. I think it's the easy way to start. You have a little marina. You don't have a marine service yard. You don't have a travel lift. You have no way of pulling boats out of the water and servicing them, to speak of. But there is a marine technician curriculum at SUNY Canton. That could be expanded now to more marine, real maritime services technician, mechanic stuff. This is just an easy way to launch yourself into marine services. We have the ability to, we talked about this a little bit, John and I talked about this, retrofit ships for ballast water inspection or even offload. The ballast water issue is still going to be a touchy one. Ships are eventually going to take care of their own ballast water, but until they do, and there's an exemption for, historic exemption for 4 or 5 years, they're still going to have to be possibly looked at. It may even be a mandate that as they cross you, some of them, flag vessels, American flag vessels on the Jones Act, may have to come in here for inspection on ballast water. You don't know where this is going to be going at some point. You have a great history of maritime service here at some point. It's evaporated. It's time to recapture some of that. While you're doing that, and that's a marine technician curricula, and air technician curricula could also happen. There is no training for air mechanics here. There's a small flight school, but you could use an Embry-Riddle flight school if you really want to get crazy about it, or just get SUNY Canton involved with doing more aircraft maintenance kind of operations training. There's no reason in the world that there can't be more air service here. You can't fight the highway issue without billions of dollars, or whatever it's going to cost for I-98. And I don't know how much St. Lawrence County is going to be asked to pay. But how long that's going to take, if it happens great soon, fantastic. If it doesn't, you're going to have to figure out some way to get people to work, to get people around this county and get people into this county to see what they want to do here. Into the county means into Ogdensburg. So, again, getting through all this meant that as we looked at Ogdensburg, primarily, there was no way to separate it from St. Lawrence County. You are the engine. This Bridge and Port Authority is the economic engine for this county, without any question in my mind. I don't care what's happening in the scene. This is the element here. If you, whatever you do, whenever you speak for the county, pretty much. So this initiative, the St. Lawrence County initiative, all comes down to these kind of cluster developments, how we put them into operation, and where you go with them in the future. And that's my spiel.
Let me plug first.
I know it's a real brief. There's 286 pages here, so condense it into nothing is difficult to do. But there's a lot to chew on. Obviously, it's difficult. There's a big to-do list, but they are slowly doable if you begin to just put your hat on the right way and say, let's begin to think about how we approach some of this stuff.
My opening question would be, I mean, obviously, I started to read some of this last night, Bruce,
Yeah.
and it was kind of things, whatever. I mean, it's just like the wheels are spinning, and you say, where do I go? I mean, it's like a flash going off, going this, that way, whatever. Where would we start? What would our process be to all these ideas? I mean, there's some ideas that we never thought of here. I know we have.
And some of them are maybe not doable.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying
they're grounded in fact. But they may not be something that maybe a resistance element to say, I don't want to go down that road. What you would need to do initially is, because this is a marketing plan, you need to have a couple of people come in here and talk to you. Let's say I would love you to look at the agribusiness first. Because that's an easy push. This cogeneration, some of the other elements are long-term pushes. Let's start with agribusiness. You need an international foods marketer to come in here and talk to you or a bunch of farmers or a round table and say, here's what's happening in the world. Here is why people are importing ginseng from the United States to go to the East. Big export. What you need are some of those folks to come in, and I don't know if you pay them or if they do it on top, whatever it is, but you need some of those folks in those industries. The marketing end of it, because it all comes down to how do you market and where do you go with it. Creating industries out of nothing is impossible unless you decide to do it. That means you throw money at it, you do a lot of other things. I would start with some international food marketers right away. I would ask development counselors or somebody like that if they're interested in talking to you to say, look, we have a sketch of something that we'd like to do for the future. Do we have a presence anywhere that says that we can rally our forces and people know what we're up to? Now, you have the ability to do advertisements. There was a nice piece that you had a while back that said establish a foothold in the USA through Ogdensburg. It was a nice flyer. I think I picked it up here. those are still wonderful things to do. I know John was saying, I don't know where to market yet until you do this study. Now I've got this enormous study in front of him, I'm sure he's lost. But I would get some very simple committees started to investigate some of these clusters. The ones that you feel are worth, there's 7 things here. I'm sure 3 or 4 we're going to throw out and say, forget it. I'm not even thinking about that right now. There's a lot of good farm folks around here, food producers, who want something to do. They want to move their product. I think you need to know is how do I get market, whatever product it is we're going to make, food product, to the major markets? Do they have to be refrigerated and packaged or frozen and sent out by rail or by truck or by ship? So I think you have a list of products in here that are produced locally. Now you need to know what could we do. So start with agribusiness. It's your strongest suit next to the port of moving general material around, which you're not doing as well as probably you could do because you don't know who to talk to yet. Or there's commodities that you haven't thought about moving yet. Maybe I don't see why you're not recycling. I mean, there are lots of recycling places around that don't have a port. You could bring in shitloads of plastic crap and do all kinds of things with it if you wanted to. But it's up to you, and that means going out and finding a commodity. Those are difficult things to do. Working with the idea that you have transportation intermodal capability, or at least full-time rail intermodal, is important for any product that has to get out of here and down to wherever it has to go. And I think the other thing you have to look at right away is that if people want to bring products through here in containers, and they put them on trucks and they're moving them around, or if they can bring them up through rail, you've got to figure out a way that you can set up transshipment or stripping sheds or all the other kinds of things that you need for container service. That means yard control and all kinds of other nonsense. But that's the core of your business. I'm not going to try to intrude in that. I'm just telling you that I think you begin with the easy approaches. I would say that I'm looking for something else to do, I suppose, for us. I mean, that's a nice thing to say that we could help with some of these things, and I want to. But I think realistically what you do need to do, and I think what I'd like to do next to do is to get you some names of some of the marketers who I would recommend come and visit you. You can do it maybe through mail, but I don't know, I think someone needs to come here and see. So I think we'll pick up half a dozen names in different industries in these clusters who you should begin to talk to and say, we are thinking about a proactive campaign to attract business to this area. What are our chances? And I think they need to tell you, realistically. They'll say, okay, you're competing against these following national markets or regional markets. Let's say not part of the study they're running. I think that it'd be great to get some folks from Quebec down here. I don't know how often you go up to see people in Quebec, or Montreal market more importantly, but I think it'd be important to see that you want to welcome the French, if you can do that, the French-speaking folks, because they're a different breed. They really are. I think getting the colleges in here. I don't know if is there any university or college folks on your board? And the doctors from the hospital administrators too. Again, the hospitals represent the only big growth that we have around here. There's the big market growth is healthcare. So to try to get, and it seems strange, like why would a Bridget Porthrade want to talk to healthcare folks? Because you want to know how you would treat more people here. Are there medical or device manufacturers or there medical products that ought to be brought here in larger volume that immediately helps you with your port movement, and maybe they're coming through from Europe, not Europe, but from Canada. The idea that there's so many people buying Canadian pharmaceuticals, I think I'm scratching my head to say, how would we move them here for repackaging to send back down to the rest of the country when you can easily just send it directly from Canada? Another element is the foreign trade zone. There's a thing called inverted tariff. You know what that is? Anybody? Inverted tariff says that if you produce a product, and let's say you buy this piece of paper, and the duty on this piece of paper is 4%, but the duty on the entire report that you're selling is 2%. Any element that goes into that report is now at 2%. So that says that if you build a car, let's say you import a car, and you're going to do an aftermarket upgrade to that car. Let's say you're changing odometers to go from the U.S. to Canada. So you're bringing a car in from somewhere, and you're then importing another product, let's say from Japan, to go into that product. Now you have the ability to say, okay, I do that in my foreign trade zone. I don't have to pay the duty. The duty on the, let's say the duty gets charged to someone, but the duty is not on the 4.5% for the muffler, let's assume. That's the thing they always use. It's the 2.5% on the assembled car. So now that there's this sort of value-added assembly kind of element to the foreign trade zone that is a whole range of products. They can be done in medical equipment easily. You don't have a medical device manufacturing base here, but you could easily have a value-added wholesale, a warehousing capability in medical products to support the healthcare industry. That's an easy win. The paper business. Now, we looked at the paper industry. It's okay, the paper industry is one of those legacy industries that's big, strong, but not going anywhere. We'd love to have, as we talked last time about, a new paper mill here. There's a whole range of paper products. Set-up paperboard boxes, fiberboard boxes, all kinds of laminating, all kinds of medical use of papers that are not being probably produced here in any way. Some of those are expensive and difficult to do, but anybody can set up paperboard box plant. You can do that. We can do that tomorrow if you want. It'd be easy. Because set up paperboard boxes can't transport. They've got to be used locally. So again, those industries that are, let's say, packaging of things to use out of here is something you do in your foreign trade zone. And you extend up at foreign trade zone and you have the industry park and all that kind of stuff and say, okay, we're going to take all this product that we import, we're going to put it in boxes, slap labels on it, send it back out, and we are going to do it in foreign trade zone. But why can't that be medical product? Why can't that be medical product that's got to support the local hospitals coming in, or medical product that's going out to the rest of the world in healthcare somehow that helps you with your healthcare cluster? So you look for the big wins. And make a long story short, the health and wellness thing that you can support with existing healthcare growth is important to you. Get the doctor, the hospital folks in here to talk to. Get the university folks in here that you need to talk to. And get the international product marketers. Food, some of the retail product marketers that are need to know. Merchant wholesale kind of folks. And get information. You need more than I can give you. You need to know what are the details of market growth and market placement to say, okay, we can then go back to our farmer group and say, this, we will help support you in cooperative development for the following industries, because we know you can do it. To get a manufacturer to create a new product is very difficult. To suggest to them there's a market for a new product, then you've got something to do. So like a government agency, you can't create jobs. You create the opportunity for the private sector to make growth. So in this case, what we need to do is say, what could the private sector do better here through your intervention?